Hi, thanks for joining us today on At the Well with Curtis. We're so excited to talk about the loyalty test that Jesus provides in the most recent sermon series, Jesus Said What? Thanks for tuning in. Curtis, was there ever a time that you had aspirations to do something other than being a pastor? Or were you too young before you became a believer?
I didn't know what I wanted to do growing up. I thought about a whole bunch of different things, but I really didn't know necessarily what I wanted to do. And so, answer to that is, I don't know.
What did your dad do?
My dad was a sky cap. He was in the Army for 8 years. And then he worked for American Airlines. He handled bags.
Yeah.
That's what he did. He worked hard every day.
Yeah.
Every black father from my generation was the same guy. He was some guy who probably served in the military, and he probably worked a hard job every day. And he didn't take a whole lot of stuff.
Yeah.
He didn't take a whole lot of stuff from anybody, to be honest with you. So,
did your mom work?
She worked until she had cancer, and then she couldn't. She worked for the city. And then she had thyroid cancer when I was a kid. In fact, they thought she was going to die. And so they did the first surgery, and a few days later they did the second surgery, and they ended up taking, these days they can do that stuff so easily.
Yeah.
But they ended up taking like a lot of this muscle and this. And for most of the rest of her life, I think just by every picture I have of her, she's got a scarf around it because she had a scar right there. So she didn't work for a decade or more.
Wow.
And then when she did, she only worked part-time after that. So,
yeah.
But
what about your siblings? What do they do?
My brothers are dead, both my brothers. But one sister she taught school for 30-something years, like 20-something. Then she became an administrator for special education.
Okay.
And then she became
for a church or something.
For Baltimore City. Then she became.
Wait, I thought I heard you say she was in the ministry.
No, administrator. She became an administrator for Baltimore City School District, but special ed. Yeah. So like here, they mainstream kids. They send them to regular school. Mm-hmm. They don't do that there. They know, they by law we're required to educate them, but it's kind of a waste of everybody's time to send them to Kirksville where we need to.
Sure.
So they had places that had residential housing, which is where they sent a lot of kids who. So she drove to Delaware because they had kids in Delaware who were like Northern Virginia or something like that because they had kids that they had to have educated.
Yeah.
But they weren't going to do it in public school. And so she might drive Delaware and go to the school, and she'd be sitting there with her checklist. Little Johnny's supposed to have a vest on, some kind of safety vest. Yep. He's supposed to have a helmet on. Yep. This is supposed to happen. Da, da, da. And that was her job, to make sure that those, those kids that they had sent like that to different places, that they were being educated and treated like they were supposed to do. So she did that probably the last, I'd say 8 years of her career. But she retired 2 years ago, I think it was. Somewhere I got a picture. She had her business card. She wrote on there, retired, in capital letters. But she did that total of 38 years. She was in Baltimore City. So, yeah. She was actually in a newspaper article about 12, 15 years ago. It was this guy from the Evening Sun. We got one big paper, morning, Evening Sun. Public employees Baltimore City public employees who make over $100,000 a year. Oh. She was one.
Well, good for her. I don't know that she wanted everybody to know that.
No, she didn't. And she when I brought it up, she said he needs to mind his business. Unless, of course, he wanted to come do her job. Though, so. Yeah. But and the other two were nurses for 40 years.
So if you weren't a pastor, you didn't know what you were doing. Would you have done a hard job, or would you have still gone to college?
We're still gone to college. Don't know what I would have settled into.
Yeah.
Honestly, have no idea. One time I thought criminal justice, but then exactly what in criminal justice? So it's like, so I don't know. I really don't know what I would have done. So.
So how did you know that becoming a pastor was actually that wasn't your initial calling, right? Because you served in the mission first.
No, but that was ministry.
Yeah,
you know,
being in ministry would be different than being a pastor in ministry.
Yeah, but I always knew it was pastoral ministry. I just didn't know, because my original plan was finish college, Christian college, then go to seminary, and then go back to Baltimore. There was a friend of mine who we talked about going back and starting a church there, starting a church that actually taught the Bible.
Yeah,
there. He ended up becoming a lawyer. And my senior year, in about March, I think I got a letter that said, from a mission in Rochester, a friend gave it to me. He says, "You're a city boy, you like city stuff." So I looked at it, prayed about it. I spent 2 days reading 1st and 2nd Timothy in an empty dorm room, literally in the closet. Jesus says, "Go into your secret closet." I was literally in a closet, it had lights in it, reading to those 2 books, and then I decided, okay, I should at least write to them. So he wrote back. Turned out the president of the board of directors was an alumnus from Georgetown, which is only half hour away from school. So he was going to be there for an alumni function. So they called and made arrangements. He drove up to the college, and he interviewed me. And then he went back and says, "I guess we should interview this guy." So
yeah,
lo and behold, boom.
How many years did you do that?
12. They hired me in June of 97. 85. I got hired here actually in June of 97. But I was there from August of 97, of 85 to August of 97.
Yeah. Wow.
I was like exactly 1 week short of being 12 years on the nose. Mm-hmm. And then we moved here.
How'd you know that you were called into the ministry?
Probably about 6 months after I got saved. I'd go to church and felt something. I couldn't explain it, and I wouldn't tell anybody about it because it was stupid. And every time I listened to various Christian guys on the radio, and then I found out about our college. They had a morning program. I think it was called Morning Focus. 6 to 6:15 every day on the station. So I found out about that, started listening to that, said, get up in the morning and listen to that before I did anything, and then I had my devotion, got ready. And it was this, inside. It's like, So finally, there was a guy at church I grew up in, who was a genuine Christian, who was my, you go, okay, follow him. I talked to him, and he said, well, keep praying about it. I'll pray with you. And then we had like a youth day service. It was in the evening. And they came up to me and says, we want you, and this was prior to it, he said, we want you to speak at youth day. About what? Whatever God lays on your heart. Oh, great, thanks. So I spoke at that. It was like 10 minutes. Pastor says, I'm going to keep my eye on you, boy. And I was like, oh, no, I did something wrong. I thought, I was terrified. It's like, my mother said, no, that's good. That's good. I was like, okay. But a lot of people told me the same thing. You did a good job, blah, blah, blah. I discovered I actually enjoyed that, as terrifying as it was.
Yeah. Did you throw up the first time?
No. No. But I was terrified. Then they had something else like that, something similar. Mm-hmm. And again, I spoke like 10 minutes. It was the same general thing. Hey, you did a good job, blah, blah, blah. And so finally I confessed. I felt, I think God wants me to go into the ministry, at least go to this college, because I listen to them every morning. I think God wants me to at least go there. So.
Because you were at a different college.
Yeah, I was in a community college at that time.
Okay.
So I talked to, again, Terry Dean, the guy I talked to the first time. His mother and grandmother were I mean, they were close to my mother, and they prayed for us every single day. His grandmother, Mildred Dean, and my mother would pray I don't know if it was every morning over the phone, and then at night she prayed with Mrs. Thomas. And they called out the name of all their kids and all their grandkids, every single day. She did with both those ladies until, who died first? Mrs. Dean died first, and my mom died second. So, yeah.
Yeah.
But I imagine Mrs. Thomas was probably still praying for me when she died. She died of COVID. Her and her daughter died in the same hospital.
Oh, no.
About a week apart from each other from COVID when it first hit.
Right.
So, but, I talked to those people. So I got these, group of less than 10 people, I guess, all going, yeah, well, we could see maybe God calling you to do something. And we could see him calling you to that school. So by the time I prayed about it, and I probably applied to the school, I thought there's no way they were going to take me. It was not like I was a great student. And I didn't come from a great church, at all. But they did. So that when that happened, that kind of locked in. Okay, I'm supposed to be there. And by the time I actually got there, I knew I was supposed to be there. And I'm going into the ministry. And the only ministry I could think of was pastoral ministry, really. I knew about missionaries and stuff. But the one that seemed to be God calling me to was pastoral ministry. I don't know why, but that seemed to be locked in my head. And so when I went, there was other kids going, what are you going to do? I don't know. I'm here because my parents make me come. I'm here because my parents say you got to go at least 1 year.
Were they all white?
99%. I had a roommate whose father was a graduate from that school, Washington Bible, and the seminary. And he made his kids go, I think, all for 1 year. And my roommate ended up staying there, graduating, and getting a master's degree. I don't know what he does now. He does something with education, I think. But, 99.9. But the school was between 75 and 80% white.
Yeah.
So, but that was, just where you were. You go to Truman, it's probably 60% white, at least?
At least.
Yeah, so.
It's probably more than that.
A Christian college in 1981.
Well, yeah, right.
So that's what it's going to be. But by the time I went there, I knew I'm going into pastoral ministry.
So when did you meet Sonora?
Into my first year.
And she at school or?
Yeah, she was at school. Yep. She actually worked in the kitchen, so I met her before then. So I met her actually sometime early that first semester. But, if you had said, tell me something about her, I didn't know. I just knew that was her name. That was it. She was from West Baltimore, which most of the black students there were from Baltimore or D.C. And most of the black ones from Baltimore was from West Baltimore. But they went to, Tony Evans' home church, which was and still is as solid as a rock evangelically.
Yeah. And she was from the suburbs, is what you're saying?
Yeah. She, I guess about 12 or 13, they moved out to the suburbs because her father was a plumber, Roto-Rooter plumber. And so they moved out to suburbs, and then they split up, and she went to northern suburb, and he went to a more south and eastern suburb. So they were still married, but they just went to different suburbs, So when I met her, she lived with her mother and sister in Catonsville, which is just north of Baltimore. And he lived in Freetown, I think, something like that, Pasadena, which is south and east of Baltimore. And my parents lived in Baltimore, but my sisters lived outside of the city. So when we got married, basically we'd make a trip to Baltimore. We'd go to my parents' house in the city. That was all our central location. We'd all meet there. And then we went to north of Baltimore, to Catonsville, see her mother and sister. And then we went one direction to see a brother and another direction to see her father. So we were all over Maryland when we went home, man. It was crazy. It was just, we went home one year, and after seeing her father, her mother, her father, her sister, who was out on her own by then, and then her brother was the last one we saw. We left his house about midnight, heading back to my sister's house, which is north of Baltimore, and this is a 45-minute ride at that time. And like daytime, it's going to be longer. And I get there, and we get ready to go through the harbor tunnel. You know, that guy knocked down the bridge. You could go through the harbor tunnel across that bridge. And I got to the harbor tunnel, I realized I don't have a wallet. So I turned around, had to get off and turn around, go back to his house, get my wallet. So we got home about 2 o'clock in the morning. And I said, never again are we coming home on Christmas. Never, no more, never.
Sherry and I, we traveled one time on Christmas. Her family lives in Iowa, and so we traveled one time. There's no bathrooms on Christmas.
Yeah. Not much open.
There was nothing open.
Yeah.
And so we thought, hey, it'd be great. We'll just travel. There's no bathroom. We had to stop at a hotel. So if you ever have to get a restroom on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
you're in trouble.
Hotels are open.
Right. Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
You know, so on your sermon, you were talking about a loyalty test.
Right.
And one of the things that struck me was denying Christ.
Right.
And I think that the obvious denying of Christ is the betrayal. You know, I don't know him, or in our world today of us just saying, yeah, I don't believe in him. I believe in science. I don't believe in God. I think a more prevalent one for us, though, is God puts something on our heart.
And we reject it.
Right. We're either A, hey, we reject it. B, we are too distracted to do it. Or C, we don't think it's a value compared to the stuff we're currently doing.
Or maybe D, we're afraid.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. I was reading Chuck Swindoll last week in preparation for a sermon. He said, you can deny Christ every day by how you live. You know, it's as simple as that. You say, I'm a Christian, and yet you go to work and, you know, you're taking shortcuts. You're not following procedures. You're, you know, doing all kind of things that people look at and go, he's a Christian? So, you know, he just made it real practical being Chuck Swindoll. He said, you can deny him and, you know, just in the day-to-day way we live.
Yeah.
So, but, you know, in that, when we were talking about the Sunday, Peter denied Jesus 3 times. But, you know, you put that in context. It's one of the worst nights in human history, you know. A 3-year follower of Jesus has betrayed him. He's been arrested. He's taken to this kangaroo court. And Peter and the rest of the disciples are pretty much scattered too. I think John is still sticking around. But, you know, that's seriously a traumatic experience right there. And it's all in one short period of time. You know, as you look at the Gospels, it seems like, and it probably wasn't like boom, 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 but it was all probably with just a matter of a few hours that, you know, he's afraid. You know, he's sleep deprived too because he's been up. They kept Jesus up all night, but he's been up. We don't know what time it was. But they just had, you know, all the stuff with the Passover supper, you know, John like 13, 14, all those things where he's talking to them, and they have communion for the last time where we get, Passover, where we get communion from, where he says, this is my body. So you got all this intensity right here. And then you have just the opposite, intensity and intimacy with him. You know, him telling them things and saying, come pray with me at the garden. And then you get all this intensity of him being arrested and a mob of men coming and grabbing him. And remember, he hacks off a guy's ear. Jesus, you know, heals a guy's ear. So you got all this intensity. And then 3 or 4, maybe more, maybe less, real intense hours. Somebody says, you were with him. No, I wasn't, you know, because he's afraid. They might arrest me too. And all that happened in just that little short period of time. And when he made his last denial, you know, different Gospels describe it different ways, but one of them says he looked right at Jesus. but he wept. In each one, he was bitterly disappointed by what he had done. And remember, earlier in the night, he said, though everybody else betray you, deny you, I won't. So, he's disappointed and he felt guilty and everything else. But that's in that one little short period of time. And he was grieved about it. And after the resurrection, of course, first Jesus appears to him on that night, but later when they're out fishing, and he asked him 3 times, do you love me? Feed my sheep. Yeah. Do you love me? Feed my lambs. Do you love me? Feed my sheep. Jesus restores him because he knows this was this intense little moment. But, you read that passage and there are people just, with their words, it's too dangerous to be associated with Jesus, I don't know him. I don't know him. I don't know him.
Well, and this is not early. This is not like 8 o'clock at night. It's probably 2 in the morning. Who are the people up at 2 in the morning?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But if you look at the context of this passage, these are people who, Caleb, you're a Christian, right? And you're in the middle of all these people talking about Christianity, and you go, these are the people who just constantly, who by their constant denials, more than likely just are yelling out, I really am not a follower of Jesus Christ. And that's why he says, I'll deny them before the Father. But they aren't real Christians. Christianity is great when it doesn't cost you anything.
I think this particular passage is a really easy story for us to say, I don't deny Christ, because we've never been put in that situation. Mm-hmm. I think that the thing that's more interesting to me or more prevalent to me today is so often I deny Christ and I don't even recognize that I did it.
Right.
I never say the words, I don't follow Christ.
Right.
God put something on my heart, hey, you should call this person.
And you don't do it.
And I don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting about that is whenever we don't act, when God puts something on our heart, what God says gets quieter next time.
Right.
Until it's almost impossible to hear him.
Uh-huh. You know what? One of the guys on our board, his father directed the mission. His father directed the same mission for 22 years. It had moved different places, but at one time they owned this massive building that one time was a girls' finishing school, way back when. Well, when the mission got it, I think they had got it from that organization. So they actually lived there. They did all the mission work downstairs. They lived upstairs. And now it's in a museum outside of Rochester, not far from where we used to live at in Henrietta, called either Genesee Valley Country Museum or Genesee Country Museum. It's got all these old buildings. And, if you ever been to Colonial Williamsburg or some of those places like that where they reenact certain things from the period, they've got old buildings and, from all these early American periods. And so there might be a blacksmith shop over here, and over this guy's doing, he's baking bread like they baked it in 1820, stuff like that. So that building is in a museum where you walk around, you see that kind of stuff, and you see those buildings. I was actually in a Wilson Foundation celebration, I guess you call it. They did it there. And so they gave us a tour of the building, of the grounds. And they said, this building here, we bought it from RIT, that used to be the mission. They took it apart, plank by plank, and reassembled it there. He said, we got it from RIT. We don't know where we got it from. It used to be something. And I said, it used to be the Rochester Family Mission. And she said, your place? I said, it used to be our place. I said, I can send you pictures, because we had tons of pictures. We had pictures from when the mission first started in 1927. And so we made some copies, sent them a bunch of pictures so they at least have some history of this old building that, they didn't know the whole history of. But, you get to doing stuff like that. Okay, the guy who was starting to tell you about, his father ran that mission and they lived in that building. He had a lady tell him when he was, get ready to go to college while he was in college, if he decided to go to seminary, following his father's footsteps, she'd pay for his seminary education. Like, wow. He became a lawyer, but he became a lawyer who specialized in church law. If it was a church They need to know something about how to start a church, something regarding church law. He was the man. It didn't matter if it was a black church, white church, Hispanic, Asian, urban, suburban. He was the man. Everybody knew him as the expert in law that dealt with churches. Was he called into the ministry and didn't do it? I don't know. I'll assume not. But there are people that we probably meet all the time who are called into the ministry, but just have.
And that's really what I want to focus on. Is you were very clearly called in the ministry. I mean, you just couldn't not be in the ministry.
Right.
You can't even explain why you chose to do it. You felt that calling.
Yep.
Most people will never feel that calling because most people are not called to be a pastor.
Right. That's probably true, but they're called to do something else.
Right. But I think that we as American Christians have a hard time understanding what our role is as a believer, how we don't deny Christ on a daily basis, how we follow Christ on a daily basis without being in full service in a ministry.
Right.
And I think it's a challenge for me. I don't do ministry every day.
Right. You do, just not, you don't consider it ministry.
That's right.
I mean, you rub shoulders with people who are discouraged, who need guidance, every day.
I sure try to, but if you get distracted,
right,
it's really easy not to do that.
True.
And so I feel like God hasn't called me directly into ministry. I feel like God's called me to do the work that he's given me and the skill set that he's given me to be in that work. But there's always a challenge of knowing, am I in God's will?
Right.
It's almost easier for me to say, hey, I'm just going to go be in ministry because I know I'm in God's will there.
Right.
But maybe you're not. Maybe it's not what God called you to do.
There are people in ministry who shouldn't be in ministry for many reasons. And there are a lot of people who went into ministry because they wanted somebody they knew wanted them in ministry. I promised my grandmother when she was dying, I'd go. Guys end up in the ministry for some stupid reasons. But if you think of, let's say, a pastoral ministry, or let's say, we use the term, it's stupid, but full-time ministry, right? That's one thing, but people don't see what they do every day. I think some of the greatest ministers in the world are teachers. Because they get every day to interact with students, to encourage this kid who's discouraged, to help him see his value and his worth, to help him achieve a skill. He couldn't do his multiplication tables, but with their help, And how many people do you meet all the time who say, Mrs. So-and-so, my third grade teacher, Mrs. So-and-so. Bible study last week, remember Matt Stocks asked that question.
Yeah.
He asked if we could think of a teacher who would influence us. Well, I had just shown a picture of my favorite teacher like a month ago, Dr. Kim, best teacher I ever had in my life. It influenced me more than any other teacher I ever had in my life. So I didn't say anything, but people were talking about different teachers they had that did, da-da. So it's like, okay. But I think, really, you take your average teacher who's a Christian, they got a tremendous opportunity to do ministry every single day.
Yeah.
If they remember that I'm here to affect people, not just teach math or.
We're so blessed to have two Truman football coaches that come to our church service, and they have kids that come to church because they show every day. They do their best to show their love for God.
Right. And
my guess is that they're not direct about it. My guess is that they're just living life.
And they see and know and they go, yeah, exactly. And you find people in every field, who are just like that. You meet them and go, man, that was one nice guy. And then you learn, oh, he's Christian. He goes to whatever church.
Yeah.
And you go, oh, okay, that makes sense. But it's just the way they carried themselves and represented Christ. And nobody is ever going to know, okay, I shouldn't say nobody. There's never going to be any big celebration of them.
Yeah.
Charlie Kirk had a worldwide celebration.
Quite remarkable, honestly.
Yeah. But if you take a average faithful Christian, they've influenced people too, but just not on the scale. Charlie Kirk, Billy Graham, these people, John MacArthur died this summer, massive funeral.
Yeah.
But they're still influencing people tremendously.
So how do we know if we pass the loyalty test?
The loyalty test?
Yeah, how do we know if we pass the loyalty test?
Okay, I think number one is verbal, because when Jesus said, deny me, he's talking about verbally. Mm-hmm. So verbal, are you boldly saying, yeah, I am a Christian? If somebody asks you, are you a Christian? Yes, I am. Are you telling people about Christ? We're commanded to actually not just live, but to actually speak. So I think if you're living and saying, when people ask you, are you a Christian, and you're living like a Christian, and you're actually proclaiming it with your mouth, I think that passed the loyalty test right there.
Yeah.
Are you a Christian? Yep. They look at you and go, well, he doesn't do that. He's a Christian. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Don't ask him to do it, because he ain't, he's not cutting those corners because he's a Christian. So he doesn't do that stuff. So I think, honestly, I think it's not that hard to check yourself to see if you're passing the loyalty test or not.
Yeah.
That particular one anyway is, do I proclaim him with my mouth? Yeah. Do I live it? Yeah.
How loudly do you have to proclaim him?
I don't think very loud at all. I don't think you have to be out every day banging the drum. I'm a Christian. I'm a Christian. I think you just live your life, and you live it. People see the difference in you. And then when they ask you, then you can tell them,
mm-hmm.
What's different about you? Because people recognize it. She doesn't cuss. She doesn't tell dirty jokes.
Yeah.
I'm a Christian. Okay. I figured it out. I think people are passing it every day just like that. I think people every day are passing that test just like that, because they see them and they see they don't do this, they don't do that. And it's not just performative. This is who they are. Mm-hmm. They genuinely don't do these things. And they believe these things. This is the guy who will take time to help you, even though he's got work to do, or will do this. You see their way they treat people. They're fair in business. They're kind to people when they interact with them. You meet some people, we have interactions every day with people and just go, man, you should go back to bed, And there are other people, my wife, who's she at? It might have been Monday, I'm not sure. Monday she had to go to the doctor in Columbus, so we were down there. But she was telling me in the car. So I don't know if it was at the doctor's office or if it was something that happened here. I'd have to ask her, but so this lady was really nice, and I don't know where, but she said she was a young lady, really nice, and she said something to her. She said, "Well, people have hard days," and I try to remember that, and so I try to make sure that when I'm dealing with them, I try to make their day a little better. And it's like, wow, okay. I think it was here. And she went looking for something, couldn't find it. This young lady helped her find it. And then she went back to the young lady and told her,
Well, Jesus gives us an example in the story with Peter afterwards. He gives him that opportunity to redeem himself. Mm-hmm. And what a cool... If you ever feel like you've denied Christ, whether it's verbally or whether you've denied him, putting something on your heart, it's really cool to see Jesus going after his heart and saying, do you love me?
Yep. And giving us every day is another day to pass the loyalty test, if you will.
Yeah.
And not just every day, but every day throughout the day.
And the loyalty test isn't due with salvation, right?
No.
So it's a completely separate conversation.
The loyalty test is, do I profess him, and do I act like I know him?
Yeah.
And there. And in that passage in Matthew 10, he's almost specifically talking about people who don't really know him. And they can show that by the fact that they won't stand up to him. Because, we think now it's easy, to say I am what I'm not. But first century, think of how hard it was to say I'm a follower of Jesus.
Right.
That could get you kicked out of the synagogue. And it happens in John 8 and 9, I think maybe 8, they had said they were going to kick people out. And then in 9, you find that blind man. And the parents are kind of iffy because they know the Jews have said, Jesus heals that blind man. They knew the Jews had said, if you profess this guy, we'll kick you out of the synagogue. Well, that's like being thrown out of the center of life in the first century. I can't go to the synagogue. I can't go to the temple. Other Jews know I'm anathema. Stay away from me. That's a life-shaking thing. And so first century, when he walked the earth and afterwards, that was, if you said, I'm a Christian, I'm a follower of Jesus, that was, you're putting your life on the line physically. You're putting your business on the line. Don't do service mass anymore. Why? They're Christians. Oh, gosh. You might get fired from your job. We talked about Sunday. Your spouse might leave you, and Paul addressed that in 1 Corinthians 7, I think it was. If the unbeliever depart, let him depart. But that was a life-changing thing to say, I belong to him. But it was also an easy thing to hang on, because when he was around, you never knew what he was going to do. So, of course, you wanted to be around, because he might turn water into wine, or heal the sick, or he's, So it's always been easy to kind of hang on to Jesus in a peripheral way.
Absolutely.
Until it gets tough. And you really have to put something on the line. Okay, if I say I'm a Christian, it might cost me. And the people who really know him go, yeah, I do. And when they deny him, they realize it. They confess. They pray, and they find the grace of God to continue. But the people who are just hanging on go, nope, not worth it. Not worth the hassle. It's too much. Yeah. Too much to lose by being associated with this guy. So.
Yep. Well, thank you. I think we're at our time here. So thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it. Join us at church on Sunday. We'd love to see you. We've got our 4th episode in Jesus Said What. Hope to see you soon.